Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Jason. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, Benjamin, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, Jason, I'm excited. This is going to be a fun episode. This is a topic that's coming up a lot lately. But before we dive in, Jason, let's get to know you. Tell us about your career and all that kind of fun stuff.
Sure. I like to describe myself as a lifelong community person, being paid to do community. It's about 19 or so years. Don't tell anybody. Even before that, if I was to trace it back, going back to high school, I was always part of communities, and one in particular that I helped to kind of nourish for a long time in the Weezer community, to really make myself a nerd on your podcast. The band, there's some really great communities. They're all over. Everybody has a reason for joining them in one way or in another. And that was always fascinating to me. I spent my early part of my career in radio and then television and bouncing around, and then found home in nonprofit because there were areas that I could believe in, and others really believed in, and helped further people's careers in trade associations, and really became a well-rounded expert, I guess you could say, in the C area. And then, it all kind of came to a stop in 2020. I was laid off along with a whole lot of people, especially in that space. We were putting on events. One of them was one of the largest trade shows in the US, top 50. And we weren't doing that anymore in June of 2020. And so that was a good time for me to sort of stop, reflect on where I wanted to be in my career. And I'd always wanted to go into the tech space, and a really great opportunity came up at a place called the DevOps Institute, which was all about getting certified in DevOps. And needless to say, they were a certification company that didn't really have a community, but the founder really wanted to see what the potential was. And I left there with having grown it to 50,000 people, and then went to Sauce Labs. And I've been at Sauce Labs for the better part of almost 3 years now, and built their community and DevRel program from scratch. And I'm just excited to be on your podcast to talk all about community and the impact that it can have on businesses.
Love it. And that's the perfect introduction to what we're going to talk about today, communities. So there's a lot of different areas where we could take this conversation, a lot of different directions, a lot of things we could discuss. But let's talk about organizationally. When we talk about communities, depending on the business, they can sit in a million different places and be run by a million different people. What have you seen work well? What are some tips and pointers when it looks like a business is ready for a community? Where do those groups need to sit? At least, obviously every business is different, but what would you recommend?
There's a couple pieces to that question. It's like an onion. I guess if I was to peel back the first layer of what you asked, it was, when do you know you're ready? Because I think that one comes before even operationally where you belong. And I think a lot of businesses make this mistake into jumping in, just saying, hey, we're going to hire a community person. We're going to have a community. It doesn't really work that way. I think really great communities happen organically for the most part. But when a business wants to get involved in community, the question is why? I think you have to add the company needs to ask itself the real reason of why do we want this function, and then also what do we have to offer? Because if it's just simply a place to show your wares, that's not going to float. Right? No community, no one's going to just sign up for a community unless you're like Apple. But even Apple back in the day, like, they had to organically grow their community and tap into a cause. There has to be a reason. And so I think it's identifying the why, who it's for, and what can you contribute. Those are the three things you got to figure out before you even have to. Those are the three things you have to figure out before organizationally you figure out where it belongs. And then on the organizational side, I have reported into product, I have reported into marketing, I've been stolen from product to marketing, sales, CEO, COO, you name it. I think I've reported into almost every function that there is. I don't think there's an easy answer to that question. I hate throwing the "it depends" at you, but it really does feel like when you know what you want that community to be, that's organizationally where it's going to fit based on what metrics you're tracking and what are the company's goals. And honestly, your community program should align with those goals, most importantly. But for that reason, I actually really like when it reports to the CEO directly or COO. I think it it helps to remain a little agnostic of the others, if you will, and not be driven solely on the purpose of, if you're in sales, we got to grow pipeline, or marketing, we're growing pipeline. If you're in product, you're going to be focused more on maybe documentation, or, educational videos, or how to get started guides or tutorials. So it being focused in operation, like to a COO or a CEO, you have some flexibility to sort of play in the middle. And I think that's a really good swim lane for community or DevRel, whatever it is, based on, whatever that business is.
I love that perspective, because you are absolutely right. Every department has this metric they're trying to hit, and they're going to say, great, it's just another channel, and I'm going to abuse this channel just to hit those metrics. And that may not be the right thing for your community. So I love that perspective. Now, when we say the word community, it's nebulous, it's kind of vague. Is that I have an actual piece of software and people are, in this Reddit community style kind of thing? Or are they on a newsletter? Or is it more broad and they just are the kind of people we interact with? What does a community actually mean?
That's the golden question, right? And it's different things to different people. I think we can all pretty much align on what community means at its most basic, definition. A place for like-minded people to talk about a like-minded topic. Or maybe the people aren't even all that like-minded, but they can align on that topic. That's something that's really interesting to them. Like for me, Weezer. And honestly, ironically, with the Weezer community, everything not Weezer, or I guess it was called All Things Not Weezer, was the thread, was more popular than the Weezer thread. And so it was just really bringing people together originally because they really loved this band. And then they decided to talk about everything but it. So, and that could be the case for, your business. Most of the time, people probably don't want to talk about your business. It's really important to you, but they might not always want to talk about it. So what industry are you serving? What space? When for Sauce Labs, for example, it's all about the test automation industry. But even beyond that, it's continuous testing. It's making software is good quality. And nowadays, I think we kind of are used to bad software, unfortunately. When everything is software and nothing works, I think as an industry, we might be facing some troubles.
Yeah, some AI untested software coming your way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, don't even get me started on that whole thing. But, so for us, it was very much trying to be supportive of a community that already exists. The software testing industry actually has a number of really vibrant communities. And so we did that, I guess, strategic exercise when I first got to Sauce Labs, trying to figure out, like, who is this for? What are we trying to serve them with? What unique thing can we offer? And we realized, we had a lot of people who were very involved in an open source project called Selenium. It's 21 years old now, but our founder founded Sauce Labs after he had founded Selenium, and it's used by hundreds of millions of people across the world for automation, not just in testing, but also web scraping. So fun fact, that's like the original web scraping tool.
That's cool.
Yeah. So like we wouldn't have these LLMs kind of borrow a piece of kind of what Selenium created 21 years ago. But, all that said, there's this really vibrant community. And what makes Selenium so cool is it is all volunteer led. There is no company that owns it. Our founder, Jason Huggins, he gave up Selenium to the Software Freedom Conservancy, a 501c3, when the VCs started coming for Sauce Labs about a year into it. And he basically said, like, this shouldn't be owned. This is not, it's not good for an industry if we own this tool that is essential for the industry, and basically created a fair market that way. And you could argue, well, Sauce Labs would be this juggernaut today, or maybe it wouldn't exist, because both are still here today, which I guess says something. And I'm proud to be on the project leadership of that now. And that was what we realized we could do. We could get involved in the community that already existed. It's a little more authentic, and it's not as self-serving. And if you are self-serving or inauthentic, you're going to lose people.
I love it. So let's say I'm a business and I have an authentic reason for creating a community, and the time is right. And I don't want to say angle because that sounds weird and manipulative, but like I have a unique value proposition that I think, okay, this group of people coming together isn't just to talk about my business, but I think there would be value for this audience that I love and care about. Speaking tactically, what are some good platforms, or does it even matter? Like, do you even care about the platform? Like, because I immediately go to the tactical and I say, okay, great. Does that mean I'm getting a Slack or a Discord or a Facebook group or whatever? What are some of your recommendations there?
I think a lot of new community managers come into the space, and the first thing they want to know is, what tools should I use? Right? I think that's any practitioner. I think they're thinking tools, and I like to get away from that as much as possible, because it really comes down to the purpose. And there's some great outlets. CMX is one of them that did a really good job of the spaces model and the types of communities that exist. And I'm going to throw out one that is probably the most common, which is like a support community. And like, to me, support communities where you show up and it's for your tool, and it's all about, hey, I got this question. You throw it into maybe a old school forum format, whether that's discourse or whatever your the tool you're using, and someone answers it, hopefully community sourced. If not, someone on your team, and then the thread dies. And that's not an appealing thing for me. That doesn't get me going and why I'm involved in community. But for some businesses, that's good enough. That's what they want out of their community. If you're going to do something like that, I like to see communities spread across multiple platforms. So maybe you have a Slack, maybe you have a Discord, maybe you have both, although that seems kind of pointless. But you also have a forum, and you're also very active on LinkedIn, and maybe you have a LinkedIn group or a Twitter X space, and the point is to be a little bit of everywhere. And that's actually called community of everywhere as a practice. And that's something that I really believe in, because if you build it, they will come has never worked, or works for very few. And it's sort of like rolling the dice. Going to where people are is always going to be more successful, in my opinion.
I love that. Okay. When you have a community and you're building it, how does content play a role in that whole thing? Is it purely driven by the community? How does the business actually interact with the community to like provide value, things like that? Because I could imagine some communities are like, no, I don't want to talk to the company, or I don't want to hear about your product, but you're trying to provide value. How do you interact with these communities?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. For us, it is all about content. It's all about education. We were very intentional in the fact that we were not going to be promotional in the content that we created. We don't have to be, because if we can stand out as thought leaders, that positions us in the space. And we were focused on very organic metrics, which was good. And that's the thing, like, you have to align what you're doing, right, with the story that you tell in China. And for some that works, for others it doesn't. For example, there's times in your company when you're not going to focus on organic traffic maybe nearly as much, and maybe you're more focused on an enterprise, more bottom funnel, mid funnel, whatever it may be, and then the top of funnel sort of gets deprioritized, and then you have to switch what you're doing. For us, for a long time, we were very focused on top of funnel. So we could have that freedom of creating content that was educational, but also meant to be kind of this carrot, if you will, like draw them in and then tease them and keep them coming back. Because I was a psych minor. And I think maybe a lot of community people there is a whole science to it where habits are formed, and communities is all about creating a habit. You need people to be enticed to come for the first time. And honestly, you're going to need to do that several times over. And for like 90 days, it takes 90 days to build a habit. And I think it's only like 2 weeks, tear it down, something like that. Don't fact check me, but something like that. And that's a lot of work, but content is a key ingredient of that.
I love it. I love it. Jason, I have learned so much. And a part of the value of this podcast is that these episodes are short and sweet and to the point. We have run out of time today. But Jason, if anyone wants to connect with you and reach out online, how and where can they find you?
If they want to connect with me online, I am on LinkedIn. That's the best place to reach me these days, because I can't keep track of what's going on with X, Blue Sky, and whatnot. So use my LinkedIn. It is Jason E. Baum. And that's it. Yeah.
And we will link to Jason's profile in the show notes. So everyone go and click on that to connect with Jason. Jason, again, thank you so much for your time and insights today.
Thank you so much, Benjamin.